Well, there you are. You have arrived. Welcome, dreamer, to Cozy Tales Collective, where time slows, whispers take shape, and every flower has a story to tell. The fountain hums its quiet melody just beyond the bend, and a cozy nook awaits beneath the willow's embrace, perfect for those who dream and wonder. But before we begin, subscribe to this channel and comment where you are listening from. Now let the magic of this story lull you to sleep. I woke up to the sharp bite of cold concrete pressing against my cheek. My head throbbed, my mouth was dry, and my body ached like I'd been through hell. The air smelled of damp garbage, city smog, and something else. Something metallic, almost like blood. I groaned, rolling onto my back, staring up at a sliver of sky wedged between two towering buildings. Where the hell was I? I sat up, my pulse pounding in my ears. My clothes were dirty but intact, jeans, a leather jacket, sneakers. I patted myself down and found a single object in my pocket, a silver key. I turned it over in my palm. It was old-fashioned, heavy, the kind that belonged to an antique chest or a forgotten door. No markings, no tag, nothing to hint at its purpose. I clenched my fist around it and tried to remember how I got here. Nothing. My mind was a foggy void with flashes of something, no, someone, a hospital room, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, a woman's voice, soft but urgent, and a name, Langley. Was it my name, someone I knew? I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing myself to focus, but the memories dissolved like smoke. Frustrated, I got to my feet, my legs unsteady beneath me. The alleyway was narrow, flanked by brick walls covered in graffiti. At one end, a neon sign flickered above a diner. The other led to a bustling street, people moving with purpose, taxis honking, the city alive around me. I chose the street. As I walked, my nerves buzzed with an uneasy sense of displacement. I didn't recognize anything. The towering billboards, the street names, the faces. People rushed past, wrapped in their own worlds, unaware that I was lost in mine. I needed answers. Fast. I ducked into a gas station and found a newspaper near the register. The date made my stomach drop. If this was right, I'd lost days, maybe even weeks. My hands trembled as I put the paper back. How had I gone missing? Who was I before all of this? I turned to leave and nearly collided with a woman. "Eddie?" she breathed, eyes widening. I froze. She knew me. She was about my age, late 20s, early 30s, dark hair pulled into a ponytail, dressed in a simple coat and scarf. There was something familiar about her face, but my mind refused to cooperate. My throat went dry. "Do I know you?" Her expression softened, relief and worry flickering across her features. "Oh my God, you really don't remember, do you?" I shook my head. "I don't even know where I am." She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, tapping a few times before turning the screen toward me. My stomach twisted into knots. It was me. My face staring back from a missing persons report. Edwin Eddie Caldwell, missing for 2 weeks. I gripped the counter to steady myself. What the hell is going on? She put a hand on my arm, grounding me. Come with me, I can help. I hesitated, then nodded, because right now she was the only person who seemed to know who I was, and I needed the truth. The hotel room smelled of mildew and something stale, like memories left out to rot. The wallpaper peeled at the edges, curling away from the walls like it was trying to escape. A single light bulb flickered above, casting jittery shadows that made me feel even more uneasy. Clara stood beside me, arms crossed, her face a mixture of concern and curiosity. "Are you sure you stayed here?" she asked, her voice low, as if speaking too loudly might wake the ghosts of whatever past I had abandoned here. I ran a hand over the dusty dresser, the wood rough beneath my fingertips. That's what the clerk said. Checked in under the name Jonathan Slate. The alias felt foreign in my mouth, yet strangely familiar, like a song I had once known the words to but had long forgotten. She gave me a look. "And you don't remember that at all?" "No." I exhaled, shaking my head. Nothing about this place rings a bell. But something had brought me here. Something had tied me to this dingy hotel, to this false name, to the ghost of a past I couldn't recall. And as I stepped further inside, that something stirred in the back of my mind, like a whisper just out of reach. I turned to the bed, where a few items had been left in careless disarray, a sign maybe that I had left in a hurry. The newspaper clippings were yellowed at the edges, the ink smudged from time or neglect. I picked one up, my eyes scanning the headline. I frowned, flipping through the rest. Each article detailed some government scandal or high-profile corruption case, names I didn't recognize, places I had no memory of. And yet, the fact that I had these clippings at all suggested that I had cared about them once, that they had meant something to me. "Eddie," Clara whispered, nudging my arm. She was holding a photograph, her brows knitted together. I took it from her, my breath catching in my throat. It was me, younger, maybe by a few years, standing beside a boy. The kid couldn't have been older than 8 or 9, with dark curly hair and a grin too wide for his face. I stared at it, my pulse quickening. "Who is he?" Clara shook her head. "You don't know?" "No." The admission made my stomach twist. The boy was looking up at me like he trusted me, like I was someone important to him, but I had no memory of him, none. A gust of wind rattled the window, and for a brief second I felt like we were being watched. The sensation slithered up my spine, a creeping unease that made me glance toward the door. Outside, through the grimy window, I saw a figure. A man standing across the street beneath a flickering streetlight. His posture was too still, too deliberate, as if he wasn't just passing by, as if he was waiting. The watcher. I knew it was him. I didn't know how, but I knew. Clara followed my gaze. Eddie? I swallowed hard, my grip tightening around the photograph. We need to go. She didn't ask questions. Maybe she could hear the urgency in my voice. Maybe she felt it too. The pressure of unseen eyes. The weight of something unspoken looming just beyond our grasp. We left the room as fast as we could, but the past had already sunk its claws into me. And something told me that whatever had started here, in this run-down hotel, was far from over. The neon lights of the city blurred into streaks as we ran. Clara's breath was ragged beside me, her fingers tight around my wrist as we weaved through the alleyways. My heart thundered in my chest, my mind reeling from the chaos we'd just escaped. Vincent Greaves' men had come down on us hard, like a pack of wolves closing in on injured prey. Detective Kane had barely gotten out of the questioning when the first shot cracked through the air, shattering the already fragile moment of tension. I'd grabbed Clara on instinct, pulling her down behind the overturned table, while Kane had gone for his weapon. But it wasn't a fight we could win. Not then, not there. Now the city swallowed us whole as we fled, weaving through the darkness, guided by instinct more than anything else. We had to lose them. Fast. "We need to split up," I panted, glancing at Clara. Her dark eyes flickered with determination, but there was fear there too. "No," she said firmly. "If we separate, they'll pick us off one by one." She wasn't wrong. Greaves' men were methodical, relentless, and we still had no idea why they wanted me dead, or worse, why my name was on that lead Kane had found. Kane. Where was he? I risked a glance behind us. No sign of him. No sign of our pursuers either. Not yet. But they'd be coming. They always did. "Where the hell do we go?" Clara asked. I gritted my teeth. I knew one place, one last desperate gamble, but I didn't like it. "The old steel factory, edge of town." She frowned. "That place is a death trap." "Exactly, which is why they won't expect us there." I could see the hesitation in her face, but there wasn't time for debate. I pulled her forward and we ran again, cutting across the empty street and slipping into another darkened alleyway. The night was alive with the sounds of the city, a symphony of distant sirens, honking horns, and the ever-present hum of electricity. But beneath it, something else lurked. Footsteps, shadows moving just out of sight. We weren't alone. I caught sight of a flicker of motion to our left, just enough warning. I shoved Clara behind a dumpster, pressing myself into the shadows as a pair of figures stalked past, their guns drawn, eyes scanning the alley. My breath caught in my throat. One wrong move and it'd be over. They kept walking, kept moving, searching. Only when they disappeared around the corner did I let myself breathe again. I looked at Clara, her expression mirroring my own. Close call. Too close. "We can't keep running like this," she whispered. She was right. We needed answers. We needed to get ahead of this. But first, we needed to survive the night. The factory loomed ahead, its skeletal remains standing against the moonlight like a grave marker of the past. It had been abandoned for years. left to rust and decay. But I knew it well, too well. This place held ghosts of a different kind. We slipped inside through a rusted side door, the hinges groaning in protest. The air was thick with the scent of oil and dust, the distant drip of water echoing through the cavernous space. "This better not be one of your bad ideas," Clara muttered. I didn't have the heart to tell her that every idea I had tonight was a bad one. We found cover behind a stack of rusted machinery, catching our breath. I took stock of the situation. No weapons, no plan, and an entire city full of people who wanted us dead. The odds weren't great. "We need to figure out what Kane found," Clara said. I nodded. "Yeah, but first we need to find Kane." As if on cue, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then answered. A voice low and urgent. "Eddie, listen carefully. Kane. They're everywhere," he said. "You and Clara, stay low. Do not trust anyone, not even the badge." Static. A heavy breath. Then one last warning before the line went dead. They're already one step ahead. The moment Dr. Evelyn Stokes's eyes met mine, her face drained of color. She staggered back, gripping the edges of her desk as if the very sight of me had unmoored her from reality. You're supposed to be dead," she whispered. Clara stiffened beside me, her grip tightening around the knife she always kept at her side. "What do you mean?" I demanded, stepping closer. "Who am I? What did you do to me?" Evelyn's lips parted, her gaze darting toward the door as if she expected someone to burst through at any second. She hesitated, but I saw it in her eyes. She knew something big. I could feel it, the weight of missing years pressing in on me like a thick fog. "Eddie Caldwell is just a name you were given," she finally said. "You were—" A sharp crack split the silence. The window behind Evelyn's desk shattered, sending glass spraying across the room. Clara reacted first, pulling me down just as a bullet lodged itself into the wood where my head had been. "They're here," she hissed. Evelyn let out a strangled gasp. I grabbed her wrist. "No more secrets. Tell me what you know, now." "There's no time," she choked out. "We have to move." Heavy boots pounded against the linoleum outside. Greaves' men. My chest tightened. They always seemed to be one step ahead, closing in before I could get answers. Clara pulled open the door, peering down the dimly lit hallway. "We need an exit. Fast." Evelyn's eyes darted around, then landed on a bookcase against the far wall. "Help me," she said, rushing toward it. Clara and I followed, shoving against the heavy wood. It groaned as it slid away, revealing a narrow passageway carved into the old stone walls. "This leads to the maintenance tunnels," Evelyn said. "Go, I'll hold them off." "Not happening," I growled. "You're coming with us." Her gaze hardened. "If they capture me, they'll want information. If they capture you, they'll erase you." A shadow darkened the doorway. A man in a black tactical vest raised his weapon. I didn't think. I lunged, driving my shoulder into his chest. He stumbled back, firing wildly. The shots went wide, ricocheting off the ceiling. Clara moved like lightning, slashing at his arm with her knife. The gun clattered to the floor. "Go!" Evelyn shoved me toward the passage. "Before more come." I hesitated, but Clara yanked me through, Evelyn right behind us. The bookcase slammed shut just as another barrage of gunfire tore through the office. The tunnel was damp, the air thick with the scent of mildew and rust. The walls pressed in around us, the space just wide enough for us to move in single file. "Where do these lead?" I asked. "Out of the hospital," Evelyn panted. "There's an access hatch at the other end." We moved quickly, feet splashing through puddles of stagnant water. My mind raced. Who was I before Eddie Caldwell? And why the hell did Greaves want me erased? Evelyn's words gnawed at me. "You were... what? Who?" Every answer slipped through my fingers like sand, and I was sick of chasing ghosts in the dark. The tunnel sloped upward. Evelyn pointed to a rusted ladder. "This leads to the courtyard. If we make it out, I can take you somewhere safe." Clara went first, climbing quickly. As I started up, a deep rumble echoed behind us, then a distant boom. The tunnel shuddered. "They're collapsing it," Evelyn shouted. I climbed faster, adrenaline surging. Clara had already pushed open the hatch, disappearing into the night. I reached the top, pulling Evelyn up just as the tunnel behind us caved in with a deafening roar. We tumbled onto damp grass, gasping. The hospital loomed behind us, its windows glowing like hollow eyes. Sirens wailed in the distance. "Come on," Clara urged. "We need to move." Evelyn took a shaky breath. "I know a place, but you have to trust me." Trust. The word felt foreign, but if she had answers, I had no choice. "Lead the way," I said, and we vanished into the night. The world around me felt like a puzzle with missing pieces. Jonathan Vance sat across from me, his eyes shadowed with concern and something else. Pity, maybe? I hated that. Pity was for people who had given up, and if there was one thing I knew about myself, it was that I wasn't done yet. "Your memory was erased for a reason," Vance said, his voice steady but laced with urgency. "You weren't just anyone, Eddie. You were one of the best investigative journalists in the state. You uncovered something big." The words felt distant, like an echo bouncing off the walls of my mind. I wanted to believe him. Hell, I needed to believe him because the gaps in my memory were a chasm I couldn't bridge alone. But what he was saying, it was too much. Too damn much. I shook my head. "I don't remember any of it." Vance leaned forward, his fingers steepled together. "That's because they made sure you wouldn't. Governor Langley and his people. They couldn't afford for the truth to come out, so they wiped your memory clean." I let out a bitter laugh. Sounds like a conspiracy theory. It's the truth. He reached into the inside pocket of his coat, pulling out a weathered notebook. "This was yours." My breath caught as he placed it on the table between us. The cover was scuffed, the pages inside yellowed at the edges, but the moment my fingers brushed against it, something inside me stirred. I flipped it open, skimming the pages filled with my own handwriting. Names, dates, locations, things I didn't remember writing but felt disturbingly familiar. "There's more," Vance said, watching my reaction. "You didn't just stumble onto something small. You found proof that Langley was orchestrating bribery, extortion, worse, and before you could expose him, he made you disappear." I clenched my jaw. "If he wanted me dead, why am I still here?" Vance exhaled. "Because death makes martyrs. A journalist vanishing into thin air. People ask questions. But a journalist who suddenly loses his mind, forgets everything, that's just a tragedy." A cold weight settled in my chest. I pressed my palms against my temples, willing something, anything, to break through the wall in my mind. The frustration clawed at me. I needed answers, but all I had were fragments, whispers of a past I couldn't touch. "What do I do now?" I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. Vance sat back. "You remember more than you think. Your instincts, those don't just vanish. And that evidence, it's still out there. You hid it, Eddie, before they got to you. You just have to find it." My fingers tightened around the notebook. The thought of Governor Langley still being in power, still pulling the strings, made my blood burn. If I had been willing to risk everything once, then I had to be willing to do it again. I lifted my eyes to Vance. "Where do we start?" A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Now you're asking the right questions." I ran my fingers over the crisp edges of the documents spread before me. Names, dates, medical reports, evidence of something far darker than I had ever imagined. Clara stood beside me, her eyes scanning the papers with sharp precision. We had uncovered a safe deposit box filled with damning proof of government-sponsored medical experiments, human trials, cover-ups, and forced disappearances. But it was the photograph that made my stomach turn cold. The boy, the same one from the tattered picture I had carried with me since the beginning. The one with the solemn brown eyes and a look of quiet despair. He had a name now, Daniel Foster. And according to the documents, he was the missing son of a whistleblower who had tried to expose the horrors buried in the depths of Langley's operations. A whistleblower who had vanished without a trace. Clara inhaled sharply beside me, tapping a page with a neatly manicured finger. "Look at this," she murmured. "These reports. The trials were sanctioned under national security measures. Anyone who resisted was either incarcerated or declared unfit." Her voice wavered on the last word. I didn't have to ask why. It was the same story my father had told me in whispers late at night. Warnings woven into bedtime stories about men in suits who decided who lived and who didn't. The kind of power that didn't answer to morals or laws. "This is enough," I said, my voice raw. "This is more than enough to blow this open." "But we need to get it to the right people," Clara cautioned. "One wrong step and this disappears, just like Daniel's father." A sharp knock on the door sent my heart racing. My fingers itched toward the pistol I kept tucked at my waist. Clara locked eyes with me, her expression mirroring my own wariness. Kane stepped inside, closing the door behind him. He looked worse than I'd ever seen him. Exhausted, shadows pooling under his eyes, his shoulders tight with tension. He hesitated for only a moment before pulling out a folded paper and sliding it across the table. "You're running out of time," he said. "They know you found the box." Clara and I exchanged glances before I picked up the paper. It was a classified report, stamped and official. A directive had been issued. We were targets now. My throat tightened. "And you?" I asked Kane. "Where do you stand?" Kane exhaled slowly, rubbing a hand over his face. "I had orders to clean this up, to make sure this never saw the light of day." He looked me dead in the eyes. "But I didn't sign up for this. Not for silencing innocent people. Not for covering up a nightmare." Clara folded her arms, studying him with suspicion. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm in." Kane's voice was resolute. "If we're doing this, I want to do it right. You need someone who knows how they operate. Someone who can give you a fighting chance." Relief and suspicion warred in my chest. Kane had always been a wild card, a man who walked the fine line between duty and his own fractured sense of justice. But right now we needed him. "How do we get out of here?" I asked. Kane pulled out a key fob and tossed it onto the table. "There's a black SUV parked behind the building. It's clean. We drive to an off-grid location. I have a contact, someone who can help us leak this without getting killed in the process." Clara grabbed the documents and stuffed them into a messenger bag. "We don't have time to debate." I nodded, gripping the strap of my bag tightly. The weight of the evidence felt heavier than I'd expected. This wasn't just about Daniel Foster anymore. This was bigger, far bigger. As we stepped out into the dimly lit corridor, my pulse thrummed like a war drum. The pieces were finally falling into place, and the battle was just beginning. I ran. It wasn't a calculated escape, not at first. It was instinct. Pure, undiluted survival. My breath came in ragged gasps, my heartbeat thundered in my ears, and the shadows of the city stretched long and menacing under the cold glare of streetlights. Every alley was a possible refuge, every open space a risk. Langley had turned the entire city into a hunting ground, and I was the prey. Kane's voice crackled in my earpiece. "Eddie, you gotta keep moving. They've got checkpoints at every major intersection." "I noticed," I hissed, pressing my back against the damp brick of an old warehouse. My lungs burned, my legs trembled. "What's the plan?" Kane didn't hesitate. "Meet us at the station. You know the route." The station. The last chance. The final push. Clara was already there, setting up. We had to get the broadcast out before Langley closed in, before they controlled the narrative for good. I took a sharp breath and pushed forward, slipping through back streets and cutting through an abandoned lot. My mind worked as fast as my feet. The memories, fragments sharp and jagged, stabbed their way back into my consciousness. Not just a journalist, a whistleblower. I'd uncovered something monstrous, something Langley had buried deep. My name, Edwin Caldwell. I'd had a life before this, before the endless chase, before the half-truths and lost time. I'd been one of them once, a believer in the system and truth. until the truth nearly got me killed. A flash of light ahead, a patrol. I ducked behind a rusting dumpster, my pulse hammering. A voice barked orders into a radio. Negative on Caldwell. Search the next block. They were relentless. I had to be smarter. I moved in the opposite direction, navigating through the city's underbelly until I finally reached the rendezvous point. Kane was waiting in a nondescript van, his eyes scanning the streets. "Get in," he ordered. I slid inside. Clara was hunched over a laptop, her fingers a blur over the keys. "We're set," she announced. "Signal's piggybacking off their own network. Once we go live, they won't be able to stop it." I nodded, my throat dry. This was it. Kane pulled away from the curb, weaving through the dark streets. "You sure you want to do this, Eddie?" I met his gaze in the rearview mirror. "I have to." No more running, no more hiding. It was time to finish what I started. The news station loomed ahead, its glass facade reflecting the city lights. Clara had done her part, bypassed the firewalls, overridden the security feeds. The hard part was getting inside. We ditched the van a block away and moved fast. A side entrance, a maintenance tunnel, and we were in. The place was quiet, but I could feel the tension crackling in the air. Langley wasn't stupid. They'd expect something. We had to be quicker. Clara led the way to the control room. Kane kept watch. My hands trembled as I pulled the drive from my pocket. The key to everything. Proof of Langley's corruption, the buried reports, the erased testimonies, the deaths they covered up. Clara plugged it in, screens flickered, then filled with data. My face stared back at me from old footage. Me before the lost memories, before the paranoia. My own voice echoed in the small room. "They'll come after me for this, but the truth has to be known." I swallowed hard. The weight of it settled deep in my chest. Clara hit a final key. We're live. Across the city, every news broadcast, every screen, every device tuned into the emergency override. Langley's lies unraveled in real time. The truth was out. Alarms blared. Footsteps pounded in the hallway. Kane cursed. "They're here." We had seconds, maybe less. Clara grabbed the drive, pocketing the only copy. "We need to move." But I wasn't sure I could. Not this time. I turned back to the screen, to the face I barely recognized. My own voice repeating the words I'd once believed in so fiercely. The whistleblower, the journalist, the man I used to be. I'd spent so long running, hiding, forgetting. Maybe it was time to stand and fight. A choice, a reckoning. I stand amidst the wreckage of Langley's empire, the remnants of his influence crumbling like the ashes of a long-dead fire. His name, once whispered in the corridors of power, now echoes through headlines, each revelation a nail in the coffin of his legacy. The world knows now, knows what he did, what Greaves did, and what I had to become to stop them. Yet even with the truth laid bare, I can't shake the weight pressing against my chest. Because I also know that some secrets don't die, they just wait. I run a hand through my hair, still damp from the rain that poured while I gave my final testimony. The courthouse is silent now. The crowd that had gathered dispersed, leaving only Cain and me under the dull glow of a flickering streetlight. He watches me, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "You did it," he finally says. "It's over." I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Over. The word feels foreign, unreal. "For now," I reply, because I know better. Men like Langley don't operate alone, and even in his downfall others will rise, eager to reclaim what he lost. Cain studies me for a moment before shaking his head. "You're not coming with me, are you?" I look past him, past the world I fought to protect, and toward the unknown. I have my name back, Edwin Eddie Caldwell, but I lost something too. A part of me will never return to who I was before all of this. "No," I say, my voice steady. "I need to figure out what's next, who I am beyond this." Cain nods as if he understands, but we both know this is where we part ways. "Be careful, Eddie," I smirk, a little late for that advice. A chuckle escapes him, but the warmth doesn't quite reach his eyes. With a final nod, he turns and walks away, fading into the night, leaving me alone with my thoughts. And then it happens. A flash, an image so vivid, so sudden, that it nearly knocks me off my feet. A room, dimly lit. A desk with a single lamp illuminating a stack of files. The scent of cigar smoke clings to the air. My pulse pounds as I recognize the man sitting behind the desk. Not Langley, not Greaves. Someone worse. The final secret. I stagger back, my breath catching in my throat. My fingers tremble as I clutch the railing beside me, grounding myself. It's not just a memory. It's a warning. A truth buried even deeper than the rest, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. I thought I was done. I was wrong. The shadows still move, and I'm not out of them yet.